My guest's book, And the Bride Wore White, is still a bestseller 9 years after it was first published. The founder of Pure Freedom Ministries has taken the journey herself and is encouraging women of all ages to live a life of purity. If you think that sounds boring, meet Dannah Gresh, a wife and mother of 2 teenage girls.
Yeah.
And we better not forget your 19-year-old son.
19-year-old baby.
You are a busy mom.
Yeah.
But you are pouring yourself out so that a new generation will walk differently than you did. May I say that, Dannah?
Absolutely, you can say that. Yeah, I was
I'll say differently than we did.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
Differently than we did.
I was a 15-year-old girl that was completely in love with Jesus Christ. I was a summer missionary for Child Evangelism Fellowship. I was active in my youth group. I was attending a Christian high school. And at the age of 15, in a Christian dating relationship, was completely blindsided by sexual temptation. And so, with such a sadness, I gave the gift that God meant for me to give to my husband on my wedding night away to a 15-year-old boy who is a complete stranger to me today.
No, you didn't get venereal disease, you didn't become pregnant.
No.
But, and here's, if there are young girls listening, I want them to hear what the cost is from what was a few minutes.
Yeah.
One night.
Yeah, I didn't have any of the physical consequences that are associated with sexual misuse, but I knew very deeply the emotional and spiritual consequences. I withdrew from all of the things that I was doing in Christian service. I became very depressed. My mother noted that I was very depressed. And we know now, the statistics tell us that the suicide rate among sexually active teen girls is 12 times higher than that of their virgin peers. There is a deep depression associated with early sexual activity. But we didn't know that when I was experiencing this. And so I went through really 10 years of utter loneliness, just putting on this fake mask of Christian perfection, trying to go through the motions, and it didn't work.
What was the rescue for you, because you have experienced the healing that you vitally needed?
Yeah, well, I was listening to a radio program, and a lot like the conversation that we're having right now was taking place on that radio program. And I heard one question and one answer. The question was, what is the number one question on a teenage girl's mind when she's talking to her mom about sexual purity? Without hesitation, a woman answered, the number one question on that girl's mind is, Mom, did you wait? And I had my brand new baby girl, Lexi, 6 months old, in the back seat of my white minivan. And that question penetrated to the deepest part of my 26-year-old heart. I pulled to the side of the road, and I really allowed 10 years of grieving to finally engulf me. I just sat there and wept before the Lord. What I realized was, if I was going to walk that little girl through a life of purity so she wouldn't know the ache and the hurt that I knew, that I needed to heal my heart. The healing that I wasn't really willing to do, the work I wasn't willing to do for me, I was willing to do for her. And I went home that night. I confessed to my husband, who thought he'd married the driven snow. I expected him...
He did not know this.
He didn't know.
Slice of your life.
No, because my relationship with him was impeccably pure.
He thought he married a virgin.
Yeah, he did. And I had tried so many times to tell him, but the fear of rejection was so big in my heart that I never could get it out. And that night, it took me 3 hours in a dark bedroom because I was too ashamed to have the lights on. I finally got the confession out, one sentence confession. And you know what? He wrapped his arms around me, and in that embrace, for the first time in 10 years, I felt God's forgiveness. And he said, Dannah, I don't know if you need to hear this, but I'm going to say it. I forgive you. And in hearing that, it was like hearing the voice of God. It was like a spiritual rebirth in my life. Even though I had been a Christian for years and years, that night was a spiritual renewal.
We've heard it said, Satan loves secrets.
He does.
It is like a toxin that we keep, and it's living and active in us, and destructive. And we have to, well, what does the Bible say? Agree with God and be at peace. Get it out there in the open. And it affects our other relationships when we're honest and vulnerable.
It does. James 5:16 says, confess your sins one to another, and then you will be healed. And that is such a precious verse to me because I have experienced that. I knew I was forgiven in my head for years. I would say, God, forgive me for what happened when I was 15. I knew it here. But that night, as I confessed to my husband, it got here. The healing got to my heart. And it's just so true that in isolation, Satan can beat us up. But when my husband was on that team with me, and then my mom, and then women in my small group, Satan had an army.
Outnumbered.
That's right.
You know, it is such a vulnerable time. I'm so glad you're going for all age groups, but you've done a special, creative, I don't know how you do all this, quite frankly, Dannah, but Secret Keeper Girl.
Yeah.
Now, we're not talking about stuffing away secrets here.
No.
Tell us where this title...
Well, Secret Keeper really comes from the idea of modesty, and that God created young women to save the deepest secrets of their beauty for just one man. And we've been teaching that to teens for years. We know that the way a young woman dresses, appearing older than she actually is one of the things that puts her heart most at risk of sexual pain when she's a teenager. So modesty really is a battle worth fighting for those.
Men are visual.
That's right.
If it's not for sale, don't sell it.
Yeah.
Don't offer it.
Coupling that with the fact that really sexual values, any values, family values, are formed between the ages of 8 and 10 years old.
You know, I have heard this for years, that if you're trying to get to someone at the teen stage, you're too late.
Yeah. And it's not that it's hopeless, but it's so much harder to build those values after they've passed through the tween years. So we've created age-appropriate ways for moms to dialogue with their 8 to 12-year-old girls about some really critical issues. Boy craziness, modesty, one man, one woman relationship, one day, not now, those kinds of things.
You know, I've said to both my children, who are teenagers, that it doesn't matter. Look at your life. I mean, you were in all the right places, learning all the right things, doing all the right things. But if your heart gets hooked, your rationality can go right out the window.
Yeah.
It has to be a commitment, a decision, a line you don't cross before you ever get to the place of potential temptation.
Yeah. Well, when